The night my brother introduced me to a table full of his work friends as basically our family maid who never moved out, I finally did something none of them were expecting. I took off my apron, placed it very gently on the back of a chair, wiped my hands on a dish towel so they wouldn't see them shaking, looked him dead in the eye, and said, as calmly as I could, "Enjoy the rest of your dinner, Tyler. This is the last time you ever speak about me like that, or to me at all." Then I walked out of my parents' house, left the sink full of dirty plates from the party I'd spent 2 days cooking for, got in my car, and drove away. I wish I could tell you that was the first time my family turned me into a punchline. It wasn't. But it was the first time I believed myself, when I thought, I deserve better than this. And if you've ever been the solid one, the reliable one, the one everyone calls when they need help, but never when they want to celebrate, you probably know exactly the kind of ache I'm talking about. To explain how I ended up there, 30 years old, smelling like roast lamb and dish soap, walking out on my family in the middle of my parents' anniversary party, I have to go back a bit. Because none of this started that night. It started years earlier, with a phone call and a choice I still feel in my bones. I was 22, living in a cramped student share near campus, halfway through my degree in hospitality and restaurant management. I was that girl who fell asleep watching cooking shows, who collected cookbooks like other people collected shoes. I'd grown up in suburban Connecticut, in a house where dinner meant frozen lasagna and arguments about money. I used to dream about white tablecloth restaurants and open kitchens and people pronouncing my name off a menu. I know that sounds dramatic, but when you grow up in a family where nothing feels stable, you fantasize about places where everything is polished and intentional and chosen. I had it all mapped out. Finish my degree, do a year in some fancy New York kitchen, even if I was just picking parsley off stems, then work my way up. I didn't need to be on TV. I just wanted a tiny restaurant with my name on the lease, and maybe someone someday saying, "You have to try Blair's Place. It'll change your life." You know, small dreams like that. And I was on my way. I really was. I was top of my class in the practical modules. My lecturers loved me. I was working nights at a little bistro near campus, soaking up every bit of chaos. I'd come home smelling of garlic and butter and feel happy, tired, but happy. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang while I was in a food safety lecture. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. I usually did during class, but something in my chest really did that weird clench people talk about. I slipped out into the hallway. "Hey, Mom, I'm in Clue. Your father fell," she blurted. No hello, her voice high and tight. "He fell off the ladder at the site. They're taking him to hospital. They think his back is, I don't know. I need you here, Blair. Now." My dad ran a tiny construction company. Company is a generous word. It was him, two guys from church, and an old truck that coughed more than it drove. There was no sick leave, no HR, no backup plan. There was just Dad and his bad back, and a ledger full of invoices that were always a bit behind. By that night, they'd confirmed he'd compressed several vertebrae. He'd need surgery, then months of recovery. He couldn't lift, couldn't drive, couldn't work. Mom doesn't drive. Mom also doesn't do paperwork. That was always Dad's thing. Numbers, schedules, contracts. Mom's realm was worrying and cleaning. Tyler, my older brother by 3 years, was in his final year of a fancy MBA at Yale. Of course he was. That was the plan since he was about 6. Tyler, the bright one. Tyler, the future CEO. The crown prince. I don't know. the reliable helper who would land on her feet somehow. That first week, I was driving 2 hours back and forth between campus and the hospital, trying to keep up with classes, trying to help mom navigate this new world of copays and physiotherapists and unpaid invoices. One night, I walked into Dad's room and found both my parents looking strangely composed, which, if you know my mother, is a big red flag. She touched my arm. "Sit down, sweetheart." You know when someone says that and your whole body just knows something bad is coming? Yeah, that. Dad cleared his throat. "Blair Bear," he said, using the nickname he hadn't used since I was 11. "We need to talk about the business." He explained it like he was asking me to water the plants while he was away. Jobs had to be finished. Bills had to be chased. Someone had to take calls. "Just for a bit," he said, "until I'm back on my feet." Mom added quietly, "We're going to lose the house if the income stops." "I can't do it." "You're so organized. You're good with people. You always have been." I sat there in that plasticky hospital chair, smelling antiseptic and burnt coffee, and I could feel my little, carefully arranged future wobbling. I knew what they were really asking. They were asking me to pause my life, to step into the mess, just for a year, maybe, just until things settled. I also knew, with a sick, clear certainty, that nobody was going to ask Tyler to do the same. His exams were too important. His internship was too big an opportunity. He'd worked too hard to get where he was. I had, apparently, just sort of floated into my degree. You know how that logic goes. Still, when they looked at me with those desperate, hopeful eyes, what was I going to say? "No, actually, I have a midterm." I told myself I'd take a leave of absence for one semester. Just one. I told myself my lecturers would understand, that I'd go back, that I wasn't becoming one of those people who just never finished. I signed the leave form the next day. The semester turned into a year. Then another half. I moved back into my old room, now with peeling band posters, and that strange, too small feeling you get going back home after living on your own. My days were a blur of driving Dad to rehab, answering calls from clients who were furious their renovations were late, translating insurance paperwork that read like something out of a law exam. At night, I waitressed at a chain restaurant off the highway because the tips were decent and Dad's savings were evaporating. I'd fall into bed at 2 in the morning with my feet throbbing, my mind racing through invoices. I could hear Tyler on the phone to Mom sometimes, his chipper, faintly patronizing voice floating up the stairs. "How's Dad? How's everything?" And Mom would say, "Oh, we're managing." Poor Blair, though. She's run off her feet. She's such a trooper. Anyway, how was your presentation? Like my exhaustion was some cute anecdote. For a while, I clung to the idea that this was temporary. I even went back to campus one afternoon to talk to my course coordinator about re-enrolling. I wore proper clothes, did my hair, tried to feel like a student again. He was kind, but blunt. "Your cohort has moved on, Blair. We can slot you into next year's intake, but you'd be with people 2 years younger than you. And you'd need to redo some of the practical units. You've been out a while." All I heard was, "You're already behind." You'd be the old one, the one who couldn't keep up. I walked back to my car feeling like someone had stamped failure on my forehead. And when I got home, Mom was waiting with a stack of medical bills and a frazzled, "Oh, thank goodness, can you call these people? I don't understand any of it." So I did. Again. Meanwhile, Tyler graduated. There are photos of him in his cap and gown, grinning with my parents on either side, Their faces lit up like they'd won the lottery. I wasn't there. I was on a double at the restaurant because another server had quit, and we needed the money. I saw the photos on Facebook in the break room while I was eating fries over a bin, and I remember this weird hollow feeling in my chest that I couldn't even name yet. Jealousy, resentment, loss, all of the above. I commented, "So proud of you," and added a string of emojis like any good sister. He replied with a thumbs up. That was it. Years blurred. Dad's back improved, but he was never really the same. He could walk, sure, but climbing ladders? Carrying timber? That chapter was over. The business shrank. Some clients never came back. He started talking about selling the truck. Somewhere in there, the narrative at home shifted subtly, like furniture being moved an inch every day. My leaving uni stopped being Blair's helping out until Dad's better and became Blair never really finished school, did she? My jobs weren't holding everything together. They were bits and pieces. Mom would say things like, "Well, you know, Tyler has a career. Blair's just here." She'd laugh when she said it, like it was a little joke that didn't sting every single time. Don't get me wrong, there were good moments too. Late nights watching TV with Dad, both of us exhausted, but companionably quiet. The first time I taught myself to make fresh pasta, and he took a bite and went, "Wow, restaurant quality kiddo. Moms aren't all one thing, and neither are dads, and neither was mine." That's partly why it all got so tangled in my head. Because they loved me. I never doubted that. They just loved Tyler's potential more loudly. Then came the year of the endless parties. Tyler landed a big job at some consultancy in Stamford. I couldn't even tell you exactly what he does. Something with strategy and leveraging synergies and whatever else you put on LinkedIn to sound important. Mom and Dad were beside themselves. They threw a graduation dinner, then a "We're so proud of you" barbecue, then a farewell before he moves into the city drinks night. Guess who cooked for all of them? "You're so good at this," Mom would say, handing me grocery lists and her credit card. "You make everything special." I marinated chicken, arranged cheese boards, baked tarts. I stood in my childhood kitchen, my hair frizzing in the humidity, praying things wouldn't burn while everyone else drank wine on the deck and talked about Tyler's salary package. Every now and then, someone would pop their head in and say, "Smells amazing, Blair," and disappear again. I was the help. I just wasn't getting paid. The worst one, before the very worst one, was a summer barbecue when Tyler brought home some colleagues for the first time. I remember that because Mom spent an entire week deep cleaning the house so they won't think we're, you know. He arrived in a pressed shirt, Stephanie on his arm. Back then, she was the new girlfriend, all glossy hair and a laugh like bells. I genuinely liked her straight away. She asked if she could do anything to help, and when I tossed her a tea towel, she actually stayed in the kitchen with me for half an hour, helping chop salad while I juggled the grill. "Tyler says you're basically the reason the whole family didn't go under after your dad's accident," she said casually, like he mentioned it every day. I nearly dropped the knife. "He said that?" "Yeah, of course. He said you stepped up, that you always do." I carry that moment around with me because it was one of the few times I realized he saw me, or at least had seen me once. I looked at him differently that day, watching him hold court in the yard, charming his boss, making my parents glow. Maybe he wasn't the villain I'd built in my head. Maybe he was just inattentive, wrapped up in his own thing. Aren't we all in our 20s? I wanted to believe the best. I always did. That's kind of my thing. Fast forward a few years. I'm 28 now, still living at home because when you're helping pay the mortgage and car repairs and dad's physio and your own phone bill on waitress money, first and last and security on an apartment feels like a fairy tale. I've added a part time job baking at a local cafe to the roster. I'd started an Instagram page for fun where I posted pictures of cakes and sourdough loaves. 50 followers, mostly other bakers and a few random men asking if I sold feet pics. You know, the internet? Tyler, meanwhile, has leveled up to associate partner or something. The salary talks went from, "We're so relieved he's comfortable," to, "We're thinking of redoing the kitchen. Tyler says he can help." Yeah, Tyler could help. I bit my tongue a lot. And then came my parents' 35th anniversary, a big number. Mom wanted a proper due. "We hardly celebrated our 30th because of your father's back," she said, waving a hand. "This one has to be special." Guess who organized it? Guest list, invites, menu, decorations, music playlist, all of it. "You're so good at this stuff," she said again, pressing catalogs into my hands. "You could do it professionally, you know," she added. One afternoon, while I was hunched over the dining room table, handwriting place cards, something with events or catering, I looked at her, pen hovering. "I literally went to school for hospitality, Mom. Remember, until I dropped out to keep the business afloat?" She blinked at me like I'd reminded her of something from a movie we'd seen once. "Oh, don't dwell on that, love. It is what it is." Tyler always said, uni isn't for everyone. I swallowed the hot rise of anger and kept writing. Names, names, names. Aunt Carol, Cousin Emma, old neighbors, Tyler's boss, half of his firm, apparently. I was in the kitchen at dawn on the day of the party, baking and marinating and pre-plating starters so everything would come out effortless. The house smelled like garlic and lemon and stress. By 6 in the evening, when the first guests arrived, I'd been on my feet 12 hours. I shoved on a dress I'd bought with my tip money, slapped on mascara, and stepped out into a room full of people already on their third glass of Prosecco. You know that thing where you walk into a space and immediately feel invisible? That. People kissed my cheeks on autopilot, eyes already sliding over my shoulder to see who else had arrived. Aunt Carol squeezed my arm and said in that stage whisper, "Older relatives have. You're living at home still, aren't you, dear? Well, at least your parents have one of you around. You're a good girl. Not everyone's cut out to fly the nest." She patted my cheek like I was 5. Tyler swung in late, with Stephanie and Liam in tow. Liam was 1 now, the golden grandchild, pudgy and adorable in tiny suspenders. Everyone cooed. Mom actually clapped. She's not a clapper. Dinner went well, because of course it did. I'd practiced every dish twice the week before, test running herbs and oven timings. People made the appropriate noises. This is amazing. Restaurant standard. "You did all this, Blair?" I smiled and shrugged and said, "Just home cooking." Inside, a small voice was whispering, "Maybe I am actually good at this. Maybe I could—" No, later. Plates needed clearing, dessert needed plating. After the main course, Tyler stood up, tapping his glass with a fork. My shoulders slumped a bit from muscle memory. The speech, at every family event, Tyler made a speech. He was good at them, I'll give him that. He has that charming, faux humble thing down. He thanked everyone for coming, for celebrating Mom and Dad, for being part of our story. They beamed. He talked about their early struggles. Dad working 3 jobs, Mom stretching meals to feed 4. There were laughs in all the right places. I even laughed. I'm not immune. And, of course, he said, turning slightly to gesture in my general direction, we wouldn't all be eating such incredible food if it wasn't for my little sister. A small cheer. I felt my face flush. He smiled at me, and for a second I thought, maybe he's going to genuinely acknowledge what I've done these past years. Maybe Blair is the backbone of this operation, he continued. She keeps the house running, keeps Mom organized, keeps Dad away from ladders. Honestly, she's basically our live-in maid at this point. Laughter. Real laughter, big barked ha-ha-has. A few people looked at me with that, she knows we're joking expression. Stephanie winced. I saw it. My mother laughed. My father shook his head in that proud dad way, like, what can you do with kids? And if any of you need a cheap caterer or babysitter, Tyler added, the showman now, riding the wave of the joke, she works for hugs and leftovers. More laughter. That one hit me physically, like someone had punched me right under the ribs. My chest actually hurt. I felt my eyes sting, and I swallowed hard, willing the tears back. Not now. Don't you dare cry now. I looked around at that sea of faces, relatives, neighbors, Tyler's polished colleagues from his firm, and I realized every single person here now had a story they'd tell about me later. Not Blair, who gave up her degree to help when Dad got hurt. Not Blair, who runs half the town on caffeine and cake. No, Blair, the maid. Blair, the babysitter. Blair, the one who never quite got it together. In that moment, something snapped, solidified. It felt like both. Like years of swallowing comments and laughing off digs had built up this crust over my real feelings. And now, under the pressure, it cracked clean through. I stared at my brother, who looked so pleased with himself, and thought, you are never going to see me clearly. None of you are. Not if I stay standing exactly where I've always been. The good girl in the kitchen. The handy joke. So I did the scariest thing I've ever done. I stepped out of the role. I walked into the kitchen, unknotted my apron, and took it off. My hands were shaking so much, I had to hold the chair for a second. I did a quick mental scan. Kids are fed. Cake is baked. Dishwashers are loaded. They'll live. When I walked back into the dining room, people were still chuckling and topping up glasses. Tyler was mid-story with his boss about some deal. I stood in the archway for a second, gathering myself, my heart banging in my ears. Then I walked straight up to Tyler. He turned, smiling, drink in hand. There she is, the star of the show, he said, loud enough for the nearby table to hear. I smiled back. It probably looked like a smile to everyone else. It felt like bared teeth to me. Enjoy the rest of your dinner, Tyler, I said. Clear, low. This is the last time you ever speak about me like that. Or to me at all. His eyebrows shot up. He laughed, of course. Oh, come on, Bly. I didn't give him the satisfaction of watching me explain. I just turned, walked straight out the front door, down the path, into my 10-year-old Honda, and drove away. My phone started buzzing before I even hit the end of the street. Mom, then Dad, then home phone. I let them ring out. I drove with that strange, numb focus you get after a shock, when you're both hyper aware and weirdly detached. My hands remembered the route back to my little rented room, above the cafe where I worked mornings. The room I'd only just managed to afford because I'd begged my parents to let me pay a small amount of rent instead of covering half their bills. "It'll be good for you," Dad had said, reluctantly, when he finally agreed, "to learn what real life costs." The irony. I pulled into the tiny gravel lot behind the building, put the car in park, and just sat. And cried. The ugly, keening kind of crying you hope nobody ever hears. The, "Oh my God, how did I get here?" kind of crying. You know the one? When I finally fished my phone out of my bag, there were 11 missed calls and 27 messages. "Mom, how dare you walk out on us like that? People are asking where you are. Get back here now." Then, "You've embarrassed this family." Then, "Stop being dramatic." "Dad, your mother is upset. You made a scene. Call me Tyler." "Jesus." "Blair, it was a joke." "You're overreacting. Don't ruin mom and dad's night because you're sensitive." Stephanie, nothing. Not then. Interesting, right? My thumb hovered over their names. I blocked all three of them. Then I turned off my phone completely and threw it on the bed like it had burned me. Here's the thing nobody tells you about finally setting a boundary with people who have always benefited from you having none. It doesn't feel triumphant. Not at first. It feels like free fall. Like you just jumped off the only ship you've ever known and you're midair, hoping there's a life raft somewhere below. I'd tied my identity so tightly to good daughter, helpful sister, family glue, that walking away from that role felt like walking away from myself. I had no idea who I was without their constant needing. The only thing I knew, sitting on that lumpy mattress in my little room, was that going back was not an option. Not if I ever wanted to respect myself again. A few days later, when I turned my phone back on, there were more messages. Some angry, some wheedling, some playing the guilt card like it was going out of style. Aunt Carol left a voicemail that started with "sweetheart" and ended with, "You only get one family." Cousin Emma texted, "Heard you had a meltdown, LOL. You okay?" I didn't reply. Not to any of them. I might have caved eventually if something else hadn't happened. Something small and stupid that changed everything. On night 4 of my family blackout, I was closing at the cafe. It was just me and Marcus, the owner, a wiry guy in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and a permanent coffee stain on his apron. I'd been baking for him for a year by then, coming in at 5 a.m. to make muffins and cinnamon rolls before heading to my evening job. He knew I was having a hard week. My red eyes and uneven temper were kind of a giveaway. "You okay, kid?" he asked as we stacked chairs. "Your brioche was extra aggressive this morning." I snorted, and then, without meaning to, I told him everything. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way he'd always given me space, but never judgment. I told him about Dad's accident, dropping out, the years of hustling, the maid joke, the walkout. He listened without interrupting, leaning on the counter, arms folded. When I finished, he whistled low. "Your family sounds complicated," he said finally. "But you know what I heard in all of that?" I rolled my eyes. "That I'm a sucker?" He shook his head. "That you ran a business for 3 years without any training and didn't let it go under. That you handled clients, schedules, money, and crisis. That you've been running my kitchen like a pro since you walked in here. That you have more drive in your little finger than half the culinary school grads I've hired." I laughed, disbelieving. "Marcus, I'm a waitress who bakes muffins. "You're not," he said calmly. "You're a chef with a crap family PR team." The next morning, I came in to find him sitting at one of the tables with his laptop and a stack of paper. "What's this?" I asked, still half asleep. "Culinary school brochures, job ads, grant applications." And he spun the laptop around. "Application for some telly show Priya keeps talking about." Priya was one of our regulars, a chatty woman with bright scarves and notebooks full of doodles. She worked in TV production in the city, some competition thing for home bakers. She says they're desperate for real people, not just influencers. He raised an eyebrow at me. "I think you should apply." I laughed in his face, like proper, doubled over, hysterical laughter. "Me? On TV? No way." He waited until I wound down, then said, serious face, Blair, "You need out. Not just out of your parents' house, out of their story about you. You're not going back. So what's next? You going to wait tables here until your knees give out? Or are you going to actually back yourself for once?" Ouch. But also, fair. I stared at the laptop. The application form was basic: name, age, contact details, a few photos of your bakes, a short essay on why you love baking. I could do that. That was easy. The hard part was the bit in my head whispering, "Who do you think you are?" That night, instead of doom scrolling and rereading my family's messages, I propped my phone on some old cookbooks and filmed myself decorating a cake. Just a simple chocolate cake with glossy ganache and strawberries. My hands shook a bit at first, but after a while, it felt normal, peaceful almost. I edited the clips clumsily, added some music from the app's library, and attached it to the application form along with photos of the pastries Marcus liked best. In the "Why do you love baking" box, I wrote, "Because it's the one thing in my life nobody can take credit for or laugh away. When I bake, I feel like myself." I hit send. Did I think anything would come of it? Honestly, no. But I'd already blown up my life that week. What was one more risk? 3 weeks later, I was plating croissants when my phone rang with a New York area code I didn't recognize. I almost didn't pick up. I thought it was going to be another spammer telling me my car warranty had expired. "Hello? Hi, is this Blair Thompson?" The voice was bright, professional, with that slightly harried edge all production people seem to have. "This is Jordan from Hearth and Home TV. Have you got a minute to chat?" I nearly dropped the pan. Uh, sure." I moved into the back room, my heart suddenly doing that wild thumping thing. "We loved your application," Jordan said. "The cake, the story, all of it. We'd like to invite you to a screen test for our new show, The Baker Next Door. Are you available next Thursday?" Everything after that was a blur of logistics. Train tickets, panic buying a dress that didn't have flour permanently embedded in it, calling in favors for shift covers. Marcus insisted on paying for the train. "Consider it an investment," he said. My family didn't know I'd even applied. They still thought I was in some kind of sulk. I hadn't told them about my new room above the cafe either. Mom left me voicemails, alternating between furious and tearful. "We're family, Blair. You don't just cut family off because of one little misunderstanding." I deleted them without listening all the way through. Every time I felt the old guilt creeping up, I'd pull up the email confirmation from Jordan and read the words again. "We think you'd be a great fit." Someone out there thought I was something other than a cautionary tale. I clung to that. The screen test was surreal. The studio was in this converted warehouse in Brooklyn, all exposed brick and softbox lights, and people in black t shirts with headsets. I clutched my box of cupcakes like a life raft. Priya, yes, Cafe Priya, met me in the lobby. "You're Blair," she squealed. She had even brighter scarves in her natural habitat. "Marcus told me about you. I bullied the casting team into watching your video twice." She looped her arm through mine and marched me upstairs. "Don't be nervous. Just be exactly the person who made that cake." In front of the camera, something weird happened. I relaxed. It was just me in a kitchen talking about food. I'd been doing that almost my whole life. A producer named Angela asked me questions about my background, my favorite things to bake, my relationship with food. I talked about comfort, about connection, about sending love into the world in the form of carbs. I did not talk about my parents or Tyler. Not really. I mentioned family obligations in a vague way when they asked why I hadn't finished my degree. That's all. I left the building sweaty, exhilarated, and absolutely sure I'd said 45,000 times. On the train back, I convinced myself they'd pick someone prettier, or quirkier, or with more followers. By the time I got home, I'd shoved the whole thing into the mental box labeled Wild Fluke and gone back to rolling pastry. 2 weeks later, Jordan called again. "So," he said, in that faux casual tone people use when they're about to change your life, "are you ready to be on TV?" They'd picked me. Me, out of however many hundreds of applicants. I leaned against the fridge because my knees literally went weak. They wanted me for 6 weeks of filming, 3 days a week, starting in a month. It was unscripted lifestyle, not a competition like the big scary shows. "We just want you being you in the kitchen, with a bit of your story woven in," Angela explained on the Zoom call. Relatable, cozy, nothing too dramatic. I nearly laughed at that. "I can do cozy," I said. "Dramatic is taken care of." Here's the bit where, in a movie, the heroine would tell her family, and they'd all gather around the TV, weeping with pride. Yeah. No, I didn't tell them. Not then. Partly because I was still hurt and furious. Partly because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They'd want credit. They'd rewrite it in their heads so that they had always believed in me and maybe pushed me into it. I couldn't stomach that. This one thing, this one door that had cracked open because I dared to apply, that was mine. Mine and Marcus's and Priya's and every customer who'd ever said, "You should be on a show," as I slid them a scone. Filming was hectic, amazing, terrifying, all the things. I'd get up at 4, take the early train into the city, spend 8 hours under hot lights pretending I wasn't sweating through my cute new tops, then get home and prep for my shifts. I met Trevor, the head food stylist, who taught me how to make cream sit on top of pie without melting on camera. I met Priya's friend Catherine, an executive producer who had this calm, take no nonsense energy I gravitated to. Marcus watched the rough cuts they sent me and texted notes like, "Smile more, you look like you smell something weird," and "You're funny, let them see that." Slowly, awkwardly, I got more comfortable. Somewhere in week 3, I found myself having lunch alone in the green room with Angela. She'd become kind of my safe person there, quiet, observant. "Do your family know you're doing this yet?" she asked, biting into a salad. I hesitated. No. One of her eyebrows went up. "Want to unpack that?" I did. So I did. I told her the condensed version. The accident, the dropping out, the maid joke, the walkout. She listened like Marcus had, without trying to fix it. When I finished, she said, "You know, in TV we talk about narratives all the time. Whose story is it? Who controls it? You've been letting your family tell your story from their perspective your whole life. This," she gestured around at the set, "this is your narrative now. You get to decide who gets a ticket to the show." That stuck with me. Who gets a ticket? I thought about tickets a lot after that, about who I'd always assumed was automatically in my front row just because we shared DNA, about the quiet audience I was building online, people who watched my first few episodes when they aired, who sent messages like, "You remind me of my sister," or "I baked your lemon cake and my kids actually ate it." I still had less than 5,000 followers. Nothing huge. But they saw me. Or at least, they saw the parts I chose to show. That mattered. The show aired in the spring. It wasn't a mega hit or anything. We were on cable at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays, sandwiched between a gardening program and a home reno show, but the network pushed promos on social, and a couple of food blogs picked it up. People seemed to like the normal girl vibe. I got recognized on the subway twice, which blew my mind. The first time, a woman about my age came up and said, "Are you Blair? My mom and I watch your show together. You make us feel like we could actually make stuff." I nearly hugged her. My family found out from, of all people, Aunt Carol. Of course. She messaged me one evening. "Saw someone on the telly who looked like you. Is that you on the baking channel?" With about 17 question marks. I hadn't blocked her because she was more annoying than cruel. I stared at the message, my stomach doing flips. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail and listened with one ear, half expecting anger. Instead, her voice was high, almost shrill, with something like excitement. "Blair, why didn't you tell us? Your father is sitting here watching you on TV. You look so professional. Call me back. Dad left one, too. Look at you, kiddo, on the big screen. Makes my backache feel worth it." I laughed aloud at that, and then immediately hated that it got to me. Tyler texted, "So you're a TV chef now? Nice. Guess those muffins paid off." No apology, no mention of the last time we'd spoken. Just entitlement to information. I didn't call. Not yet. I sent one group text, because I'm not a monster, saying, "Yes, that's me. It was a last-minute thing. I'm busy with filming and work, so I can't talk much. But I'm glad you're enjoying it." Boundaries in text form. Mom replied instantly with about 12 heart emojis and "We're so proud XOXO." Then, a few days later, she called again, this time with an agenda. "We're having a little gathering next month," she said, her tone breezy but with that tight edge, "to celebrate your show. We've invited some neighbors, your aunties, a few of Tyler's colleagues. We thought you could maybe, I don't know, do a little demo? Bake something?" I closed my eyes. Of course. A viewing party for my show that they'd throw. And I'd cater for free. "I'm really busy, Mom," I said carefully. "I don't know if I can," she huffed. "You always make time for other people. We're your family. Don't punish us because you had a mood at the anniversary." There it was. My furious exit, my months of silence, my pain, all boiled down to a mood. I felt that old anger flicker, but behind it was something steadier now, a sense of choice. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm just prioritizing myself for once. I'm happy you're watching the show. That's enough. Silence. Then, colder. Well, don't expect us to keep defending you when people ask why you're not around. That made me laugh, genuinely. Mom, you were never defending me. That's the point. I hung up. I cried after. Of course I did. I'm not immune. But I didn't backtrack. I didn't call back and smooth it over. That was new. As the show grew, slowly but steadily, so did opportunities. A small publisher approached me about doing a cookbook. Nothing massive, Catherine said. Think cozy, weekday baking, your tone from the show. I signed a contract with shaking hands. We did a photo shoot in my actual tiny kitchen. The book came out and did surprisingly well. Again, not New York Times list well, but my face on the end cap in Barnes& Noble well. My parents, apparently, discovered this when Tyler texted them a photo from the business section. Of all places, someone at his firm had brought in my book. Know her, they'd said. She's from my hometown. Tyler told Mom it was good PR for the family. Those were her exact words to me later. You make us look good, sweetheart. In between all of this, life kept happening. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Chen, a softly spoken woman with sharp eyes. Because, surprise, you can't just stuff a decade of resentment and martyrdom into a cupboard and expect it not to leak out. She helped me untangle why I'd said yes to every sacrifice, why my self-worth felt stapled to other people's opinions. We talked a lot about loyalty, about the difference between loving people and letting them walk all over you, about that little girl inside me who thought she had to earn her place by being useful. It was hard and necessary. I also met Peter, because of course there's a Peter. He came into the cafe one rainy Tuesday, soaked through, asking if we had anything left that was at least 50% sugar. I handed him a slice of my cinnamon coffee cake, and he made this ridiculous face on the first bite, like he'd seen God. We started talking. He was a freelance photographer, did a lot of food and lifestyle work for magazines. When I shyly mentioned I had a show, he grinned and said, I know. I shot the promo stills last month. You were holding a pie and looking very serious about it. I remembered the camera, but not the man behind it. Too many people in black t-shirts, too much adrenaline. We went for coffee as colleagues a week later, and then for drinks as maybe something else. The week after that, he was calm where I was anxious, gentle where my family had always been sharp. When he met Marcus and Priya, they pulled me aside after and said in unison, he's a good one. Don't ruin it. Helpful, as always. If this all sounds like an uncomplicated glow-up, I promise, it wasn't. There were still late nights when I lay awake wondering if I'd overreacted that night at the anniversary, if I was being selfish, if I should have gone to that celebration party Mom wanted. They sent me photos afterward. Everyone crowded around the TV, my face frozen mid-sentence, cake crumbs on plates. Tyler posted one on his Instagram with the caption, so proud of my little sis killing it on screen. Knew you had it in you. The comments from his colleagues made my skin crawl. Ah, family talent. Guess you got all the charm, Ty. She got the skills. When's she catering for us? Not one person outside my therapist and my tiny inner circle knew the truth about the maid joke, the years of unpaid labor, the walkout. To the world, we were just a normal family. A bit loud, maybe, with one overachieving son and one daughter who'd found her calling. Then came the email that would become my quiet, glorious revenge. It was from a charity my show had partnered with. a community kitchen initiative that taught low income families how to cook nutritious meals on a budget. They wanted to host a gala fundraiser in New Haven. "We'd love you to be our keynote speaker," the organizer wrote. "You'd do a short cooking demo, talk a bit about your journey, why food matters to you. Paid, by the way, actual money. Plus, they wanted to honor my parents." Yeah. Turns out, Mom had been quietly volunteering one afternoon a week, teaching basic recipes. "She's wonderful with the kids," the email said. "She told us about how you started cooking for your family when your father got injured, how you gave up your studies to support them. We'd love to celebrate you both." I sat there staring at the screen, torn between three equal and opposite feelings: pride, my mother, teaching; terror, speaking about my story in front of them; and anger. She was out here telling strangers the very story she minimized to my face. I forwarded the email to Dr. Chen with a one-line message: "We're going to need a bigger session." She wrote back, "Sounds like an opportunity. Let's talk about how to make it safe for you." Safe. That was the word. I said yes to the charity, with conditions. I wanted control over my speech, no pre approvals by anyone else. I wanted the focus to be on the community work, not on my rags to not quite riches story. They agreed. I then texted Mom for the first time in months and said, "I hear they want to honor us both at the gala. I'll be there. We'll need to talk." Her reply came within seconds. "Blair, I'm so glad you're coming. People are going to be so impressed. Dad will be thrilled." No mention of needing to talk. No hint she realized what might be coming. Of course. The night of the gala, I wore the nicest dress I owned, navy blue silk that made me feel like I had my life together, even if my insides were jelly. Peter came with me, his camera slung over his shoulder, ostensibly for the charity, but really as emotional support. The event was in this high-ceilinged hall, round tables with candles, those funny little dragons of steam rising from chafing dishes. Mom was already there when we arrived, bustling around with name tags. She saw me and froze for a second, then walked over a bit too fast, arms open. "Blair." I hugged her stiffly. She smelled like lotion and onions. "You look beautiful," she said, eyes shining. Then she noticed Peter and wiped at her cheeks. "You must be Peter. We've heard a lot about you." That sentence stopped me cold. "You have?" I asked. Peter squeezed my hand under the table. "Oh, Tyler told us," she said breezily. "He stalked your Instagram. He said you look like an influencer couple." Tyler and Stephanie arrived late, of course. They slid into seats at our table, all smiles. "Hey, Abby," Tyler said, like we'd had coffee last week instead of not speaking properly in over a year. "Look at you, keynote speaker. Fancy." I took a sip of my water so I wouldn't say something I'd regret in front of the charity people. Liam climbed into my lap and started chattering about cake. Kids, they have no idea how many emotional landmines they diffuse just by existing. When it was my turn to go up, I walked to the podium with my heart pounding. The charity director had already said a few kind words about my show, my authentic presence, all that media fluff. Then she said, and what moved us most was Blair's story of family, of showing up when things got hard. I inhaled. Okay, there it was, my story. Time to tell it my way. I'll spare you the full half-hour speech, but here's the gist. I talked about growing up in a house where money was tight, but my mother could turn a bag of rice and some onions into something that felt like a hug. I talked about Dad's fall, briefly, and how suddenly food went from "what's for dinner" to how do we stretch this so everyone eats. I said, I dropped out of school to help run my father's business and look after my family. At the time, it felt like failure, like everyone else was moving forward and I was stuck. People told me kindly that I'd get back to it one day. My eyes met my mother's. She flinched. That day never came, I continued, because life doesn't always circle back neatly. Sometimes you have to build a whole new path from where you are. I didn't name names. I didn't repeat the maid joke. This wasn't the time. But I did say this. For a long time, the people closest to me saw my cooking as just something I did, a nice little hobby, a way to be useful. They didn't see it as work, as talent, as potential. And honestly, neither did I. It took people outside my family, bosses, friends, viewers, to reflect back to me that what I was doing had value, that I had value beyond how helpful I could be at home. My voice shook on that last line. I saw Angela in the back, nodding slowly. Peter's camera was pointed straight at me. I knew he'd zoomed in on my hands, gripping the podium. Then I shifted, like Dr. Chen and I had practiced, from pain to purpose. The reason I'm here tonight, I said, is because places like this community kitchen show people a different story about themselves. They tell a single mom who's been told she's useless in the kitchen that actually she's resourceful as hell. They tell a teenage boy who thinks cooking is for girls that feeding yourself is power. They tell people who've been belittled or ignored that their effort matters. I looked at my mother again. This time, she was sobbing silently. Everyone deserves that, I finished. Everyone deserves to feel seen. The room applauded. A few people stood up. It was surreal. I walked back to my seat on shaky legs. Mom grabbed my hand as I sat. I didn't know you felt like that, she whispered. Her mascara was halfway down her cheeks. We just, she trailed off. For once, she didn't have a tidy little line. Tyler stared at his plate. Stephanie looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. After the speeches, there were photos with the charity staff, donors, volunteers. At one point, the director put an arm around both Mom and me and said, Look at this mother-daughter team. You raised quite a woman here. Mom smiled weakly, eyes flicking to me. She raised herself, she said quietly. Later, outside in the cool night air, while Peter hunted down an Uber, Tyler followed me to the edge of the car park. Hey, he said gruffly. Good speech. Thanks. Awkward silence. Look, he continued, rubbing the back of his neck, about the whole maid thing. My chest tightened. We'd never used the actual word when talking about that night. I was an ass, he said simply. I thought I was being funny. I wasn't. I'm sorry. I looked at him. Really looked. He looked older. There were lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before, a slump to his shoulders. You hurt me, I said. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. You didn't just make a joke. You summed up my whole life into a punchline and made everyone laugh. He flinched like I'd hit him. I know, he said. I know. I've been seeing someone, a therapist. Stephanie made me. She told me if I didn't sort my crap out, she was going to take Liam and go. That startled me. I hadn't known that. So, yeah, he finished lamely. I'm working on not being that guy. It wasn't the grand, groveling apology some part of me had fantasized about at 3 a.m., but it was something. And for the first time, I believed he meant it. Okay, I said. Thank you for saying that. I didn't add, I forgive you, because I wasn't sure I did. Not yet. Forgiveness is a marinating process, not a microwave. But I cracked the door open, a sliver. That felt like enough for that night. The next year was weird, in a good way, mostly. My show got renewed for a second season. The cookbook sales ticked along. I picked up some brand partnerships. Nothing gross, just stuff I actually used. I moved out of the little room above the cafe and into a real apartment in Queens with Peter. We found this one bedroom with creaky floors and terrible water pressure, and a big sunny window in the kitchen. I cried when we signed the lease because it was ours. Ours, not my parents', not tied to anyone else's crisis. Just a home I chose. My relationship with my family settled into an uneasy truce. Mom texted occasionally, mostly photos of Liam with jam on his face and, "He loves your pancakes from the book." Dad left the occasional voicemail about some show he'd watched, where the chef reminded me of you, only less pretty, which was his strange way of complimenting both me and a stranger. Tyler sent the odd meme. We weren't close, but we weren't at war. I thought maybe that was as good as it would get. And honestly, I could live with that. I had my chosen family in the city. Marcus, Priya, Jordan, the crew, Peter. I had work that filled me up. I had a therapist who refused to let me slip back into old patterns. It was enough. Then, of course, life threw another twist. Because it always does, doesn't it? About 18 months after the gala, my publisher called. "You might want to sit down," she said. "We've had an offer. A major streaming platform wanted to do a longer form series with me, traveling around, cooking with real people in their real kitchens, telling stories through food. Think travel show meets therapy session." My imposter syndrome had a full on panic attack. Me, fronting a whole show, without the safety net of a set and a food stylist, and Trevor quietly fixing my mistakes off camera? It felt too big, too much. Catherine and Angela talked me down. "They're not asking you to be someone else," Catherine said. "They want more of you. That's not an accident." We signed the deal. The money was more than I'd ever seen in my life. It wasn't never work again money, but it was pay off debts, help Marcus expand the cafe, actually save for a house one day. Money. I told Peter by waving the contract in front of his face while he was half asleep. He sat up, blinked, and then started laughing. This joyous, disbelieving laugh that echoed exactly how I felt. "Of course they want more of you," he said. "Have you met you?" I rolled my eyes and threw a pillow at him, but I tucked the words away. News of the deal hit the trades a few weeks later. Little blurb, Hearth and Home favorite, Blair Thompson, to front new streaming food series. They used a photo of me laughing mid-stir. Flour on my nose. Cute. My Instagram exploded a bit. So did my mother's group chat, apparently. She called, breathless. "You're going to be on Netflix," she said, getting the platform wrong but the excitement right. "Everyone at church is talking about it. Aunt Carol says her book club is obsessed with your lemon squares." Then, more quietly, "Your father wants to do something special. To celebrate. Maybe a family dinner, just us. No colleagues, no speeches. We owe you that much, Doctor." Chen and I unpacked that for 3 sessions. The idea of going back into that house made my skin itch. The thought of sitting at the same table where I'd been labeled the maid and now suddenly being the famous one was complicated. But there was also this stubborn part of me that wanted to see, had they really changed? Or were they just excited about the shiny PR? I decided to go. On my terms. Peter would come. We'd drive ourselves. If at any point my stomach did that hollow drop feeling it used to do, we'd leave. Simple. Walking into my parents' house that night felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The furniture was the same, the cheap framed prints, the too bright overhead light in the kitchen. But there were little differences. A photo of me at the gala, on the mantelpiece, next to Liam's school photo, my cookbook on the counter, spine cracked from use, Mom hovering by the stove, dish towel in hand, clearly having overcooked something because she'd been worrying. Blair, she breathed when she saw me. She hugged me longer this time, her whole body soft, not stiff. We're so happy you're here. Dinner was normal. Weirdly normal. Dad asked Peter about his photography business, like it was an actual job, not a phase. Tyler told us some self-deprecating story about messing up a presentation that made Liam giggle. No one asked for free cooking tips. No one made jokes about my little show. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did, in a way, but not how I expected. Dessert plates were being cleared when Dad cleared his throat. I want to say something, he said, echoing that night at the gala. My shoulders tensed, on autopilot. I've been thinking a lot these last few years, he began. Doctor says it's good for my brain. A small, nervous laugh. About when I fell? About what we asked of you. His eyes met mine. They were wet. A man should provide for his children, not the other way around. But when I couldn't, you stepped in. And then, when I got better enough to walk again, I let you just keep stepping. It was easier. For me, he took a shaky breath, and I let myself see you as here, around, helping, instead of as someone whose whole life got sidetracked because I didn't have insurance. Mom reached for his hand. He squeezed it, then looked back at me. That's on me, not you. Not life, me. I should have insisted you go back to your studies. Should have sold the truck sooner. Should have told Tyler to put his big boy pants on and pitch in. I didn't, because it felt good to have you there, fixing things. I'm sorry, Blair Bear. He hadn't called me that since that first night in the hospital. It knocked the breath out of me. I'm trying to do better, he added, almost shy. Therapist says I can't change the past, but I can apologize without making excuses. So, I'm sorry. Mom jumped in, words tumbling. And I'm sorry too, she said, for all the little digs, the at least Tyler comments. I don't know what I thought. That you were strong. That you could take it. That if I pushed you, you'd do something. It never occurred to me that you were already doing everything. I laughed when he called you the maid. I laugh when I'm nervous. Or when I don't know what else to do. It was wrong. I was wrong. And then, when you left, instead of asking why, we got angry. Because it was easier to be angry with you than with ourselves. She wiped at her nose. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope. Maybe one day you can forgive me. Tyler didn't make a speech that night. He waited until later, after Peter had gone to put Liam to bed. Because, of course, he and Liam had bonded instantly. Kids and good men just find each other. He caught me while I was washing my hands in the bathroom, of all places. Midlife crisis in your 20s, huh? he said softly. I snorted. Something like that. He leaned in the doorway, fidgeting with his watch. I listened to your podcast interview, he blurted. I stared at him. What? The one where you talked about boundaries and burnout, and how your people pleasing nearly cooked you alive. They sent it around at work as part of some wellness thing. I clicked on it without seeing your name first. Halfway through, I was like, she sounds like Blair. And then, yeah, he trailed off. Hearing you talk about us without naming us, it was like someone held up a mirror. Not the nice kind. I didn't know what to say. I was an arrogant prick, he continued. I thought my degree made me better. I thought my paycheck proved I was right. I used you as a prop. In my stories, in my head. Look at my chaos sister. Aren't I impressive next to her? It's gross. I'm sorry. He swallowed. And not just because you're successful now. I'd like to think I'd have got here eventually, even if you were still slinging hash at the truck stop. But maybe I'd have taken longer. Maybe I needed you to leave. To get it. He met my eyes. You leaving saved you. But it saved me from becoming Dad 2.0 too. So, yeah, thanks for that. Even if it nearly broke us. We stood there in silence for a minute. The only sound, the faint buzz of the bathroom fan. Finally, I said, I'm not going to pretend everything's fine now. It's not. It might never be simple, but I appreciate you saying all that. He nodded. I don't expect you to just come back, he said. I just want you to know I see you now. Really see you? Later, curled up on the couch back in Queens with Peter, I tried to put into words how I felt. It's like I've been holding my breath around them for years, I said, waiting for the joke, the dig, the ask. Tonight felt different, like we were actually all in the same reality for once. He stroked my hair. You taught them how to treat you, he said, by refusing to be treated badly. That's not nothing. He was right. Walking out that night at the anniversary wasn't just a tantrum. It was a line in the sand. And every time after that, I didn't answer an angry voicemail, didn't agree to cater for free, didn't rush in to fix their mess. I reinforced that line. Did it cost me things? Absolutely. I missed years of Liam's life. I missed birthdays and Christmases. I sat alone in my little room more than once while other people posted family photos and thought, maybe I am the problem. But looking back now, from the other side, I can say this with my whole chest. The life I have now, my work, my home, my peace, only exists because I was willing to lose their approval. These days, my relationship with my family is real. Not perfect, not Instagram worthy, real. Mom still says tactless things sometimes, but she apologizes now instead of doubling down. Dad asks before he tells people about me, like, you okay if I show my bowling mates your show? Tyler and I have an understanding. No jokes at my expense. Full stop. If he slips, I call it out. He doesn't sulk. He corrects course. Liam thinks it's normal that Aunt Blair is on the iPad, but he also knows I'm the one who sits on the floor building Lego towers and lets him lick the spoon when we bake cookies. That matters more to me than any TV deal. The streaming show happened. It was hard and beautiful and exhausting. I coped with grandmothers who'd fled wars, with single dads learning to make more than boxed mac and cheese, with 20-somethings whose parents never taught them to use a knife. I cried on camera more than once. So did they. The show did well. We got renewal. I became, officially, successful. But somewhere along the way, I realized that the revenge I'd assumed success would bring, making everyone who doubted me eat their words, didn't feel like I thought it would. When people from my past messaged me like, wow, you really did something with your life, it was nice. But it didn't hit the same as coming home to a kitchen that was finally mine, a partner who loved me whether or not my ratings dipped, friends who knew me off screen. The best revenge wasn't making them sorry. It was making myself happy. If you're still listening to me ramble at this point, first of all, bless you. And second, I want to say this directly to you, woman to woman, sister to sister, stranger to stranger. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to walk out of rooms where people turn you into a joke. You are allowed to say, no, actually, I won't organize this party, cook this meal, watch your kids, pay this bill, listen to you tear me down just because we share blood. That doesn't make you cruel. It doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you someone who has finally realized that loyalty without respect is just self-harm dressed up as duty. You don't have to wait for a TV producer to call to start your new story. You don't need a glamorous career pivot or a public platform. Maybe your Marcus moment is a friend saying, you're really good at this, when you fix their CV. And maybe your Jordan phone call is an email from a local course you've been too scared to sign up for. Maybe your first boundary is as small as not picking up the phone the first time your mother calls to complain about your siblings. Tiny acts of rebellion add up. They teach your nervous system that the world doesn't end when other people are disappointed in you. And if, one day, the people who hurt you do the work, real work, not just crocodile tears when you're on the front page, and come to you with apologies, you get to decide what to do with that. You can say, I forgive you, but I need space. You can say, thanks, but no thanks. You can open the door a crack or fling it wide. There's no prize for being the most forgiving. There's only your peace, your safety, your joy. Guard them fiercely. So, if any part of my story sounded uncomfortably familiar, if you've ever stirred a pot in your parents' kitchen while everyone else toasted someone else's success, I'd really love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family that everyone told you was too much? Have you ever walked away, literally or emotionally, to save yourself? How did you find the courage? And what did life look like on the other side? Tell me in the comments. You never know who might read your story at 2 a.m. and think, if she can do it, maybe I can too. If this hit home for you, if you saw yourself in any of my messy, tear-streaked chapters, please hit that like button. It lets YouTube know that these kinds of honest, complicated stories matter, and it helps other women find this video when they're searching for answers they might not even have words for yet. And if you want more stories like this, real women, real betrayals, real comebacks, make sure you subscribe to Revenge Diary and turn on notifications. We talk a lot here about boundaries, about quiet revenge, about choosing your soft without losing your softness. Finally, if there's someone in your life who needs to hear that it's okay to choose themselves, maybe a sister who's always cleaning up everyone's mess, a friend drowning in her family's expectations, share this video with her. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing one other person say, I walked out. I survived. I'm happier now, to light that little spark of courage. Thank you for sitting with me through this. Take care of your heart. You deserve good things. You really, really do.